This is Newsmax TV. Arizona Senator John McCain pulls no punches as he warns of the federal government's total failure to secure the border with Mexico. As such, he announces his support for his state's new anti-illegal immigration law. In an exclusive interview, McCain also tells Newsmax editor Christopher Ruddy why bipartisanship is dead in Congress. And he warns of drastic tax increases on middle-class families because of the Democrats' left-wing agenda. John McCain lays it all on the line for you right now.
Senator, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to join Newsmax. I think you know I'm a long-time admirer of your fight in this Congress for fiscal sanity and for national security, which I believe, and I know many of our viewers do, believe that's one of the most paramount issues. So thank you for speaking with us today.
Well, thanks for having me on.
The first question I want to discuss is the Senate looking at the finance regulations bill. It looks like now the GOP has cleared it to go to the floor of the Senate. Where do you see that going? Do you think the Democrats will incorporate some of the issues that the Republicans want in that bill?
Well, I hope so, and negotiations continue, but again, we run into philosophical differences about the role of government, the same way we did with Obamacare. So I hope we can get an agreement. Obviously, there needs to be reforms made, but the question is how much government intervention? And second of all, I don't want to go through the numbers of the problems, but Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were two of the prime catalysts for this breakdown, and there's nothing in this legislation to address those two. And they are still government-backed entities that are costing the taxpayers hundreds of billions of dollars. So, and just one more point. The real litmus test of this is, does it ensure that no institution will ever again be too big to fail? In other words, require taxpayers' dollars. And so far from this legislation, it does not do that I've seen.
And so far, I think we're seeing again a breakdown of this bipartisanship the Democrats keep talking about, their desire. I mean, you have a history of working in a bipartisan fashion when you think that there's important national issues. But we've seen in this administration, the stimulus bill, the Obamacare bill, now this bill, a real lack of bipartisanship on the part of the Democrats. Would you venture to say that bipartisanship is dead for this Congress?
I would say that largely so. I mean, there are certain areas that we can work together. I'm ranking member of the Armed Services Committee. I work with Senator Levin, the chairman, on authorization for the men and women in the military. But for all intents and purposes, yes. The fact is that this administration came to power with 60 votes, they no longer have, with an overwhelming majority in the House of Representatives, and they decided that they would ram through legislation, as you mentioned, whether it be the budget, the stimulus package, omnibus appropriations bills, health care. So there's never been any genuine outreach on the part of this administration to work in a bipartisan fashion. As you mentioned, I've been involved in bipartisan issues. It is not there. And it's compounded by the fundamental fact that America is a right-of-center nation, and this administration is governing from the left.
Do you think Republicans should remember that if they come back into power in the next Congress?
Oh, I think we should remember that we blew it last time by letting spending get completely out of control. We disillusioned our base. We still have a selling job to get people back with us, and we have to make an absolute commitment that we will stop the out-of-control spending, which has mortgaged our children's futures.
Turning for a second to Arizona, very controversial immigration bill has passed. You've come out strongly in favor of it. The Obama administration is maybe going to challenge the law. You're also really strong on border security. Is that the key reason you're backing this immigration law in Arizona?
I think the legislation is clearly a reaction to the federal government's failure to carry out its responsibilities and secure our borders. Let me just give you two numbers. One is 241,000 illegal immigrants were apprehended crossing the border in the Tucson sector. If you do the math at 4 or 5 to 1, that's over 1 million people that have crossed Arizona's border in just 1 year. And it's all mixed up with the drug cartels. Last year, again, in Arizona, in the Tucson sector, they apprehended over 1.3 million pounds of marijuana. The drug cartels and the human traffickers have taken over in Mexico, and they are a direct threat to the security of the United States of America. We all want to fix this problem, but the fact is that Arizona reacted, and by the way, that law does not mean that law enforcement people will stop someone simply to check whether they are in the country illegally or not. There has to be reasonable cause. It's like the seatbelt law. If you are driving with your seatbelt off, they won't stop you. If they stop you for another offense, then you can be cited for not wearing your seatbelt.
They're not picking out people just because they look Latino or may look like a foreign person.
No, and with some exceptions. The majority of lawmen that I have talked to in Arizona say that it'll be the same as before, and they will make sure and train their people that there is no racial profiling.
You and Senator Kyl have come out for sending 3,000 troops to the border in an emergency effort. You're calling for funding for 700 miles of fence between the United States and Mexico. Do you see these as temporary emergency relief efforts, or is there long-term solutions that we need to look at on this illegal immigration issue?
John Kyl and I have a 10-point plan. 3,000 National Guard troops immediately. Over time, 3,000 additional Border Patrol being hired. Complete the fence. We have found that in urban areas, 2 and 3 tiered fences do work effectively. Surveillance capabilities, including UAVs, hardship pay for those Border Patrol that have to be out in these tough conditions, interoperability capability between the different law enforcement agencies. It's a long list, but the fact is that it can secure our borders. There are people who will say, we can't secure our borders. We can, and we have in certain areas in the country already.
Turning to some of the fiscal issues facing the country, Sarah Palin has praised you. She says you have been, quote, leading the fight against reckless spending for decades. She said you were the Tea Party before there was a Tea Party. The CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, is now estimating that the national debt will hit $20 trillion in the next decade. How do we deal with they almost seem like intractable problems. Had we been listening to you years earlier, we'd be in a lot better shape. I know that's easy to say, but what's the future? How do we deal with these looming problems?
Well, as an example, let's start off with a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution of the United States. Every town, every city, every county, every state, they have to balance their budgets. Why shouldn't we have to balance ours? They're able to do it at great sacrifice. While the city of Phoenix cut its budget last year by some 35%, we increased spending here, domestic spending, by some 20%. What's the difference? We print the money. So sure, we can get the budget under control, but it'll be tough. Will it be tough? Absolutely. But we are paying the penalty for a long time of letting these deficits get out of control. And could I just say, it was bad under Bush. It is terrible under this administration. A $1.4 trillion debt just for this year, and the president is just not telling the truth when he's saying that he inherited the problem. He inherited part of the problem, but he has compounded the problem.
Right. Well, I'm glad that you spoke out. Newsmax spoke out against the spending under the very high discretionary spending under Bush. One good thing I think Bush did ultimately was the Bush tax cuts. They are set to expire this year. That means an automatic rise in taxes for almost every bracket by about 10%. Congress doesn't have to do a thing for that to happen. Obama's already raising taxes, we know, through Obamacare. And we know that they're already talking about a VAT tax. Is there any hope you see in Congress keeping the Bush tax cuts, at least getting the Democrats to compromise and keep them for a while longer, and keeping taxes under control?
I think we have to try, and I think that the American people, the worst thing we could do to them in these tough economic times is raise taxes, which is what the effect of the expiration of the Bush tax cuts would be. But it appears as if we are going to see dramatic increases in taxes on most of the, quote, Bush tax cuts. The president has already contradicted his pledge during the campaign of not raising taxes on people, individuals making over 250 and families making 200 or vice versa, whatever it is. There is some $60 billion in new taxes on lower income Americans just as a result of Obamacare. It's disgraceful.
If the Republicans were to have a big comeback in November, do you see that the Democrats, Obama might rethink some of these tax increases?
Well, I think we could force him to. I think we might even have a showdown, because I think it's that important to American families that we not increase the taxes.
Turning the page to national security matters, and I know this is one of your strong suits, Iran is very close to developing a nuclear warhead. Some Israeli sources say that it will be within the next year. They may already have the fissile material to do it. President Obama keeps talking about sanctions, but he really hasn't been putting the muscle behind the sanctions. Do you think, why is he not pushing the sanctions stronger and setting some deadlines for these folks?
I don't know, except that it's been this continuous unclench the fist, outreach, greetings to the Islamic Republic of Iran. We have pending sanctions bill here in the Congress that obviously the administration is holding up. They continue to chase this illusion that the Chinese and the Russians will cooperate with us on meaningful sanctions. They haven't, they won't. And it's a fundamental misreading of the nature of the Iranian regime. And we have to speak out in behalf of the human rights of the Iranian people and understand that this regime is bent on the acquisition of nuclear weapons.
Israel, there is some chatter, may use unilateral military strikes to stop the building of such weapons. A, do you think it'll happen? And B, what would you feel about that, the U.S. government should feel about that?
Well, I think that the Israelis are faced with two really terribly difficult choices. One is to allow the Iranians to continue and thereby proliferate the Middle East with nuclear weapons, and sooner or later a terrorist organization getting a nuclear weapon. And second, to attack unilaterally, and that of course brings the whole Arab world down on them. If we could act on really tough sanctions, I think that there's still that opportunity. But look, let's suppose that we had a neighbor to the south of us that said they were bent on our extinction, and we're acquiring the weaponry and the missiles in order to achieve that goal. I think the United States of America would also be making some tough choices.
Two last questions. The nuclear START treaty that Obama has signed, do you think it will pass the Senate? Are there real concerns about the fact tactical nuclear warheads aren't even included?
Well, one of my big concerns is during the signing ceremony, the Russians issued a statement saying that any missile defense developments that they felt were, quote, threatening, then they would unilaterally abrogate their involvement in the treaty. Now that's after we've been assured by the Obama administration that it wasn't on the table. We have to. This is one of the great strengths. One of the things that brought about the end of the Cold War was Ronald Reagan standing up to Gorbachev and saying, we will not abandon our missile defense efforts. And it seems that this administration is at least turning a blind eye to a statement made by the president of Russia at the time of the signing that missile defense developments in Europe would be viewed as a reason for them to abrogate their involvement in the treaty. That's not acceptable.
Well, the last question is not a policy question, but a perspective one. You have been in the Congress for almost 3 decades now, and you have faced a lot of political environments. And when you consider the national security, the economic situations facing this nation today, how do you feel? Do you feel that we're in less serious times in the past, the worst times? How would you describe that to the American people based on your long experience?
First of all, I have great faith in this country and its ability to remain, to make the 21st century as the 20th century was another American century. But in the short term, I'm very worried. There's an appearance of weakness throughout the world. The Chinese are becoming more assertive. In our own hemisphere, we have Hugo Chavez buying $4 billion worth of arms from the Russians asserting their, quote, near abroad, whether it be Ukraine, Kyrgyzstan, other areas. The perception in the Middle East that we may be leaving is causing certain individuals and countries to reassess their relationship with Iran and other countries. So there is the statement by the president that we'd be withdrawing from Afghanistan in 2011, no matter what, is disconcerting to me. So there is an appearance of weakness, but there was an appearance of weakness under Jimmy Carter. And so I have a great confidence in the fact that we're still the best militarily, economically, ideologically nation in the world, and under the right leadership we will maintain our position. I was very disturbed at the president's statement that, quote, the United States remains the world's preeminent superpower, military power, whether we like it or not. That was a very interesting statement. And he said, therefore, we are drawn into conflicts around the world. We went to Bosnia to stop ethnic cleansing of Muslims. We went to Kosovo to stop ethnic cleansing of Muslims. We should have gone to Rwanda to stop genocide. America has a role in the world, and I'm proud of the role we've played in defense, freedom, and democracy, usually somebody else's.
Why do you think the president's apologetic about our superpower status? Do you have any clue, any idea? None.
No, I don't. I think in the mistaken idea that somehow this will cause people like the Iranians and other totalitarians to cooperate. It's been tried before.
I really appreciate not only your time, but your leadership on these very, very vital issues. And again, thank you.
Thanks for having me on again, Chris. Good to see you. Thank you.